I remember we were sitting in a restaurant having dinner, and we were in the midst of a discussion. It wasn't a fight or anything like that. It was stressful, or not stressful in relation, but she was recalling an event that was stressful to her. And she went on recalling this story, whatever it was, and I nodded, listening. And when she was finished, she paused for a couple of seconds, and then she looked at me and she was like, it's so weird. You're like this, and I'm like this. I said, I know. And I said, can you imagine how disconcerting it is when you have worked for a very long time, for years, on yourself and on your life to get to a point where your life and your nervous system and your peace is like this? And how frustrating and unsafe it feels to be linked to someone romantically who is like this, who said in the beginning that she was like this. And as it turns out, it was a facade, and she's been like this all along, to which you are clearly now admitting. I'm sure you can probably guess that relationship did not last much longer, but it did last much longer than it should have. And during the breakup of that, when I was in my own therapy session, my therapist asked me a very poignant question. And she said, what is something that you have learned? Something that you learned from that relationship specifically? And I thought about it for a few moments, and I said, I got to learn this lesson experientially, something that I already knew conceptually. But I think in these deeper issues, you really don't learn something until you learn it experientially. You go through it, you walk through that fire, and you know that lesson in your bones, right? And I told my therapist, I said, I learned that my first commitment in any relationship is the commitment I have to myself. Now, don't get me wrong. When I say that, I'm not saying that I'm being selfish and only thinking about myself and putting myself first in everything. It's not what I mean. That is selfishness. What I mean by that is I am committed to being wholeheartedly in a loving relationship with my true and whole and safe and secure self, so that I may bring that best self to that other person, to that relationship, me as a whole, in the best form that I can be. Doesn't have to be healed, fully healed. Doesn't have to be perfect. It just means that each and every day, yes, I'm choosing that person, but I can choose that person from a calm and safe and serene state because I wake up every day and I choose myself, and I care for myself in the way that I would care for somebody that I loved deeply and dearly. See, in that relationship, I wasn't safe. I wasn't safe emotionally. I wasn't safe mentally. And in some ways, I wasn't even safe physically, if I'm being honest. And I stayed too long, as I said. And I stayed too long because I thought I was doing something noble. I thought I was being a good man. When we had entered into that relationship, in the beginning, she had posed as someone who did the work and achieved a certain amount of peace in her life. Well, it didn't take long to realize that that was a lie. And I'm not even necessarily saying that she was lying to me. She most likely was lying to herself first and foremost, and by proxy, of course, then was lying to me. And that happens as we're growing up. But within that relationship and seeing that, I ended up abandoning myself. And I thought by that age, I had learned not to abandon myself in that way. And in many ways, I had. But as I saw these things, appearing and then falling apart, and issues that were coming up that I did not believe that I was going to be dealing with in that relationship with that person in accordance to what we both said and committed to. These were issues of an immature nature, things that I thought it was not romantic but noble to stay committed to this individual as they were struggling, to stay committed to someone just because they said, oh, I'm committed to doing work and getting better and healing, even though I'm not seeing any authentic action being taken in that realm. And I'm coming and I'm being supportive and I'm helping and I'm hoping. But I'm not seeing that in the areas that I need to be seeing that the most, which is your intention and your behavior. And that was an important lesson for me to learn, because commitment is not always easy. It's often difficult. And when I say commitment, I'm not talking about a physical commitment that you're not going to step outside of the relationship physically and, physically cheat on that individual, although yes, that is very much included, very much. I'm talking about a commitment to being there always, a commitment to walk with that person through the ups and downs, the thick and thin, a commitment to be there and to love and hold and support always, no matter what. This is wedding vow type commitments, 3 months into a new relationship. I really don't know this person all that much. We like to think that we do because we stay up having late night chats until the wee hours of the morning and not wanting to get off the phone in that new love ecstasy that we go through in the first honeymoon stages of a relationship when we are under the influence of that love drug. But like all good drugs, the high wears off and then comes real life. And like all with all good drugs, there's going to be a withdrawal period. And then you're going to have to make some hard choices about life and about love and about where you're going in relationship and how you're going to show up in relationship with that person. And what does that mean about showing up in relationship with yourself first? Those are not always easy decisions to make. Love is a hell of a drug. And so yes, while it is a good and noble and decent thing to show up for your partner in and through everything, you have to first make sure that you are in good relationship with yourself. And that is not always easy, right? It takes work. And by being in that healthy relationship with yourself, you have to look at several relational dynamics, right? Where are your boundaries? How did you come up with those boundaries? Where are the tough lines drawn in the sand for those boundaries? How does being in love change or shift those boundaries? How do you open up these walls that you put around your heart through the different failed romances that you've been in? How does that show up with this person? Is this person open to you in that way? Are they actually committing to the relationship in a way that you think that they should, a way that you think that you are? Have you even had that conversation? Have they had that conversation with themselves? And they are showing up on a regular basis in that commitment to loving themselves in a real way that they can then share with you. Big questions. And it's a lot easier to go on dates and drink and have wild sex. And that's all good and fun when you're young and whatnot. But at some point, even those drugs wear off. Sex is a good drug. Booze, good drug. But drugs are cheap, just like that talk. And, the folly of youth is certainly great and fun for a time. I'm not trying to knock that, as long as it's done in a safe way, of course. But as we grow older, we have to start taking stock of ourselves and thus taking responsibility for ourselves and how we show up in the world by knowing how we show up thoroughly in relationship with ourselves. We have to stop hurting people. We have to stop first hurting ourselves. And a lot of us are emotionally masochistic. And we like to open our hearts too much and give so much of ourselves, give so much of that time, give so much of who we are to people that are just not capable of giving that back. And if you've ever been in one of those relationships where you're an excellent swimmer, or maybe you're an average swimmer, but somehow you are tied to someone who's drowning, it can bring you under very quickly. And so what do we do? What do we do about this? Who teaches this? We're not taught this in school. We're not taught how to love ourselves, how to teach ourselves, how to love other people, how to love one another. It's just kind of like, go out here and figure it out. You're young and hormones are raging. You don't know anything, but you think you know everything. And actually here, we're going to throw in alcohol and sex and all kinds of craziness all at the same time. I hope, good luck. Figure it out. Hope it goes well. Hope you don't die. Some do. We have to start prioritizing conversations with younger people. We have to start prioritizing conversations with ourselves and in our homes in ways that treat the harder discussions with some sense of dignity, that treat these topics that are of the utmost importance, these topics of the heart and how we share ourselves and who we let in and how we show up. We have to start bringing life to these conversations, intelligence, bringing wisdom. What do the elders have to say? What do the masters have to say? We have to start showing up as love in our life first before we can even venture to have a love life. I'm game to try if you are. So, if these are conversations that you're interested in hearing, conversations that you want to be a part of, then hey, come subscribe. Tell me down below. Share one of these stories with me, where maybe you were in something and you stayed too long and you gave too much. Your heart was too wide open and maybe you drowned. But thanks for listening. Hope to hear from you. Leave a comment below and let's keep having these conversations. And along the way, don't forget, heal your heart, renew that mind, transform your life. See you in the next one.